This is 1 Corinthians 1:18-31. Let us listen to the Word of God. For the message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God the world did not know God through wisdom, God decided through the foolishness of our proclamation to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks desire wisdom, but we proclaim Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those who are the called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and wisdom of God. For God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than human strength. Consider your own call, brothers and sisters. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, things that are not, to reduce to nothing things that are, so that no one might boast in the presence of God. He is the source of your life in Christ Jesus, who became for us wisdom from God, and righteousness and sanctification and redemption, in order that, as it is written, that the one who boasts, boasts in the Lord. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
One of the things we know and understand about Greek culture during Paul's time was their love for knowledge and for wisdom. They believed that human wisdom, of which philosophy was the crown jewel, they believed that human wisdom and philosophy was of utmost importance. You see, wisdom for them provided a view, by the way, invented by man, but it provided a view of seeing the world, of discerning meaning to life, determining values, shaping relationships, revealing what your purpose in life is. When we study Paul's trip to Athens, we learn much of the Greek way of life and just how important human wisdom and philosophy was to them. Nowadays, people spend their time at work, on the golf course, playing tennis, riding bikes. There's all kinds of things that we do for entertainment and for exercise. Reading books, trying to do crossword puzzles. I don't think I've ever completed one of those. Or playing, what's that game, Sudoku? We fill our minds with things and we spend our time in ways to help us grow. If you were in Athens, what you would see is that during the day, the men would gather at the Areopagus. And they would spend their days discussing and arguing and debating all of the philosophical views of the day. They would spend their whole days talking about all of the different views. And it wasn't an effort to convince one another that one view was right and one was wrong or that one was better. It was simply an exercise in debating and arguing. Hannah, in college, dated a boy for a while. It wasn't Nate, by the way. I tried my best to like this boy. I liked him better than anybody in our family. That's not saying a lot. You knew what they thought about it. But when they would come here to visit, we would never see them. They were always trying to resolve an argument. From the time they woke up and saw each other till they went to bed, they were arguing. I think that's how it was in Athens. It was like mental gymnastics. It was a way of just working out. That's how they spent their time. But that's how important philosophy and wisdom was to them. It was worth their time and their efforts. And it played such an important role in their culture and society. Wisdom and logic guided their way of life. And the importance that they placed on wisdom and logic explains many of the issues that people had with the message of the cross. All through our text, Paul talks about the message of the cross. What is the message of the cross? What it is not is simply a reference to the way in which Jesus died. The message of the cross isn't just talking about the cross and crucifixion. When Paul uses the word message of the cross, he means the entire gospel message. He means the birth of Jesus Christ to a young, nondescript couple in a lowly manger in an unimportant, out-of-the-way village that not many people knew of in Israel. It was the announcement of that birth, the Son of God, not going to the palaces or to the noble or the wealthy, the influential, but where did it go? It went to the shepherds out in the field. Shepherds, by the way, were considered less than human. It was the whole idea of God becoming human. It was the notion that an innocent man, let alone the Son of God, would give his life on a cross for something somebody else had done. And it was about the whole idea of the resurrection. All of that is what Paul means when he talks about the message of the cross. So whenever we come across Paul talking about the message of the cross, don't just think of the cross on Calvary. Think of the whole message and everything that's involved. Now again, remember that the Greeks were deeply committed and embedded by wisdom and logic. It really shaped so much of their life. And Paul tells us then that the message of the cross, that whole gospel message, was simply foolishness to them. See, it didn't make any sense. When they would apply their logic, their wisdom, and their philosophy to the message of the cross, it just didn't add up. That was the issue for both the Jews and the Greeks. The Jews wanted a supernatural sign. Now, I don't know about you, but if I saw someone killed and laid in a grave and 3 days later saw them walking down the street, that's a supernatural sign. They didn't buy it. The Greeks, they still just couldn't make the whole thing mesh with their logic. It was just illogical. It didn't make sense, so they had a hard time believing. And it all points to the underlying issue here. Human wisdom is dependent upon something. And that something is human intellect. And there's the problem with putting your faith in human wisdom. It's dependent upon human intellect. Now, you can argue, and you would not be wrong. You could rightly argue that the human intellect, our wisdom, our philosophy, our thinking, all that, is a gift from God. And it absolutely is. But remember, that divine gift of intellect is part of the fallen world. When sin entered the world and we experienced the fall, everything fell. So, human logic, human wisdom, human intellect is flawed. Paul knows this. So he seeks to demonstrate the shortcomings of human wisdom that so many rely on. A lot of books and articles that are written today about the state of the church, the future of the faith, Christianity going forward, will contain a catchphrase. It's kind of the popular word, I think, in many ways today when talking about churches. And it talks about our need to be relevant. There's even churches with that name now. We're the relevant church. I've yet to come across the irrelevant church. I think the church and our message is always relevant. But what I find interesting is as they talk about that, when you look at like Paul's message today, it's as comfortable and at home now as it was then. I found it interesting this week. I was reading an article that said until about 1900, human knowledge doubled every century. Okay? So up until about 1900, every 100 years, wherever the human knowledge was, it would double every century. It would just keep going. Think about that. From the beginning of time and all of that, how much knowledge we had gained as it doubled every 100 years. By the end of World War II, it was said that knowledge doubled every 25 years. Today, on average, human knowledge is thought to double every 13 months. IBM speculates that we will reach a point where human knowledge doubles every 12 hours. Think about the amount of knowledge that is in the world today. And yet, we really need to be asking the same question that Paul asked. Where has all of this knowledge and wisdom gotten us? See, we are more educated than our forefathers, but we are no more moral. We have more means of helping each other, but we're no less selfish. We have more means of communication, but we don't understand each other any better than we used to. We are more connected through social media. You could ask me about a lot of people right now, and I could go on Facebook and I could tell you exactly where they are, what they're doing, and probably what they're eating. And yet people are more lonely and isolated than ever before. We have more psychology and education, and yet crime and war continue to increase. See, even as human wisdom and knowledge has increased by leaps and bounds, the basic problems that have plagued humanity from the beginning of history remain. Human knowledge is not what we lack. We've got an abundance of human knowledge. And while our human knowledge and all is increasing, the quality of life in many ways, the underlying core problem remains, and that is sin. Now, Paul by no means is condemning human wisdom, logic, philosophy, and all that. What he is being critical of is when we think that human wisdom and knowledge can overcome sin. When we think that human knowledge and wisdom can overcome the problems we face. The problem is that human wisdom does not see the underlying problem of sin, nor does it see or know God by itself. Perhaps you have heard me mention a theologian by the name of John Calvin. Only weekly, maybe. Okay, I do like John Calvin. And so I do gravitate as a Calvinist to a lot of his teaching. One of the key points of Calvinism and in the Reformed tradition is that due to the fall and the prevalence of sin in human life, on our own, we would not know God nor seek God. Okay? That sin is so deep within us, and it so pervades our whole being, from our mind and intellect down to our little toes, that left to our own desire and design and all of that, we would not know that God exists, and we would not even think we needed a God. That's how depraved we are. Right? It's just the reality. It's how strong sin is. And where Calvin is pointing us, and it's where Paul was pointing us, is God is the initiator. God reaches out to us, and we respond. It's all about God. We respond to His initiation. It's not through our intellect, not through our wisdom. It's through the moving of the Holy Spirit and God working in us. And so Paul points to the message of the cross. And we are invited by Paul to go against the grain of human tendency, to move to that point that much of the world wants to call foolishness. That we move to that point and embrace the message of the cross. In the end, you see, what many in the world have labeled foolishness has proven to be wiser and more effective than those things that we call wisdom. Through the foolishness and the scandal of the cross, God has made a way for our sins to be overcome. And that way is not built on human wisdom, power, strength, ability, achievement, knowledge, wealth, honor, nationality, or your social standing. Okay? Sin doesn't care who you are, what you have, or what people think of you. Forgiveness is found only in Jesus Christ. Nowhere else. And that's really a radical way of viewing God. A radical way of viewing the problem of sin and how to overcome it. But there's a reason that it's set up that way. There's a reason that God set it up so that we couldn't achieve it on our own. And because we can't achieve it on our own, what it means is all the glory needs to go to one place. And that's God. Paul asked the people of the church in Corinth to consider their own journey of faith. He says, not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. See, in essence, Paul is reminding them that according to the world standards, everyone sitting in that church in Corinth was a nobody. They weren't important. They were not famous. They weren't wealthy. They were not well educated. They were not powerful. They were not influential. Walking down the street, most of them would not get a second glance from those people in power. And yet, as Paul reminds them, all of them have been delivered from sin through Jesus Christ and the message of the cross. That's part of the ongoing good news. I've said it countless times, but many of you have heard this. If you've sat in any church for any length of time, I suspect you've heard a preacher say this. There's one thing that all of us share in common. I don't care who you are. We share in common that we're all sinners. That we all fall short of the glory of God. Live to the best of your ability. I don't care how good you live. We still are sinners. Because we're part of the fallen world. That's why we say that the ground beneath the cross is level. See, we all stand in need of forgiveness. We all stand, no matter our circumstances, no matter what we've done or how well we try to live, we all come up short and are all in need of grace. But here's something else we share in common. As Christians, we all share in common that we have been forgiven in Jesus Christ. So not only are we sinners, we are redeemed sinners. We have been forgiven. Not because of what we have done, not because of who we are, our name, our reputation, but only because of Jesus Christ, who He is and what He has done. And therefore, none of us can stand before another and brag about where we are in our faith with God. Because all of us have been delivered through the same way, and that's through Jesus Christ. So we know, or we should know, that the wisdom of God appears as foolishness to those who are caught up in the world. So let us dare to live against the grain of popular opinion. And let us accept the message of the cross and receive the forgiveness and the grace that it brings. Amen.